Do you think it's okay to have a president, though, where there's this open question about whether or not he's in cognitive decline?
Do you think it was okay to have President Trump in cognitive decline for his entire 4 years?
When a Fox News reporter tried to ambush her with questions about President Biden's mental fitness, a Democratic Congresswoman flipped the script in this viral moment. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to look at in this video, starting with this one here. There's a great viral exchange between Hillary Vaughn of the Fox Propaganda Network and Pramila Jayapal, a progressive Democratic Congresswoman. We'll play the clip and unpack it together.
Do you think it's okay to have a president, though, where there's this open question about whether or not he's in cognitive decline?
Do you think it was okay to have President Trump in cognitive decline for his entire 4 years?
For the race?
Ouch. What a great comeback. What a great mic drop moment for Representative Jayapal. As far as I'm concerned, this is at least one of the standard answers that Democrats should give anytime that a member of right-wing media or centrist media or certainly other like Republican colleagues, when they try to ambush Democrats with questions about President Biden's cognitive fitness. Now, I know some people in the comments will say, well, that's a whataboutism. But actually, no, it's about holding both leading candidates for president to the same damn standard, which is everything I've been advocating for from the beginning. If you want to ask questions about President Biden's mental fitness, that's perfectly fair. He's the president of the United States. He wants to be president again. It's the most important and difficult job in the world. But Donald Trump was also president. Donald Trump wants to be president again, and he should be held to the same standard, especially since they're both old. You know, Biden's 81, Trump is 78. They're both legendary gaffe machines. And the polls, as I've said before, and I will remind you again during this video, poll after poll after poll show that a majority of Americans, have doubts about the mental fitness of both candidates. So I'm sorry, when we're making this determination, assuming President Biden chooses to remain in the race and Trump does as well, in November, these are things that we have to consider. This is not just a one-sided issue, no matter how much the media and right-wing media in particular wants to pretend that it is. The New Republic did a really good write-up about this exchange between Jayapal and Hillary Vaughn of the Fox Propaganda Network. And in the write-up, they reminded me of things that I'd totally forgotten. This is the challenge with Trump. Trump has done so many stupid, unhinged things that it is impossible for anyone to have like quick recall of all of them, right? So, and I suspect that many of you may have forgotten about some of this as well. So let's read some of it. Again, this is from the New Republic. Jayapal's right. Donald Trump has repeatedly shown that his memory is slipping. The presumptive Republican nominee is prone to incoherent rambling, slurring his words, and forgetting the names of lawmakers, his doctor, and even his own son. His doctor, of course, remember that Ronnie Johnson, and of course, it's Ronnie Jackson. It's funny that Trump would forget the name of his own son. He's not exactly known as being a particularly attentive father, except for Ivanka, and that's for an entirely different and much more disturbing set of reasons. I digress. And while all of these examples are from the campaign trail, it's worth noting that Trump has been making similar gaffes for years, including during his time in the White House. And this one's a big one I forgot. In 2019, when Trump was still president, 733 health professionals signed a petition to Congress claiming that Trump's psychological state was quickly deteriorating. Donald Trump has the real potential to become ever more dangerous, a threat to the safety of our nation, they wrote. The same is still true. Jayapal released a statement Monday emphasizing the stakes of another Trump term, but stopped short of supporting President Biden's candidacy or hinting that the president should drop out. She did have a message for the media, though. Any reporter or pundit who is asking about or talking about the aftermath of President Biden's debate performance and health should also be spending at least the same time or the same amount of time and energy talking to Republicans about why they are still supporting a convicted felon who incited an insurrection and wants to be dictator on day one. Which is true. They should also be spending equal amount of time holding Trump to the same standard of mental fitness. There's no reason not to. This is not a contest between an 81-year-old President Biden and a 50-something-year-old Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis who's in his 40s, right? Then I would understand the total asymmetry. But Trump and Biden are much too similar in the profile, the age, the gaffe history, and again, the serious questions in terms of polls. But I want to draw your attention real quick to, again, that piece of trivia I'd forgotten. The article in the New Republic will hyperlink you to a Business Insider article from December 5th, 2019. And it says 350 health professionals signed letter to Congress claiming Trump's mental health is deteriorating dangerously amid impeachment proceedings. But if you scroll all the way down, the number did actually climb. Dr. Lee told Business Insider by email on Friday morning that the number of signatories had risen to 773. So that is a staggering number of people. And this was 5 years ago, saying that Donald Trump's mental health had deteriorated. Again, there's no reason why we can't hold these two men to the same standard. And I'll give you another point of contrast, courtesy of the Midas Touch Network, who put this compilation together. President Biden held a scripted event, a teleprompter-included event, and so did Donald Trump the same day. President Biden was speaking to, the amassed ranks of NATO leaders, and Donald Trump was doing his typical campaign rally. They were both receiving the benefit of teleprompters, and the contrast between these two men is staggering.
In 1949, leaders of 12 countries, including President Truman, came together in this very room and created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
I didn't even know what the hell NATO was too much before, but it didn't take me long to figure it out, like about 2 minutes.
Today, NATO is stronger than it's ever been in its history. 32 nations strong.
28 countries. 28 countries. Think of that.
We know Putin won't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
Ukraine, when you think Ukraine, I had a very good relationship with Putin. We talk about it. It was the apple of his eye.
As President Reagan put it, and I quote, "If you are threatened, we are threatened. If you're not at peace, we cannot be at peace."
And they said, "Would you protect us?" I said, "No, I will not protect you from Russia."
Again and again at critical moments, we chose unity over disunion.
When people who love our country protest on January 6th in Washington, they become hostages.
Freedom over tyranny, hope over fear.
If you leave Florida, you end up getting shot, mugged, raped.
This is a pivotal moment for Europe, for the transatlantic community, and I might add for the world.
Did anyone ever see the lovely movie Silence of the Lambs? Did you see it? Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a lovely man.
Reagan knew it then, and we know it now. Our nations will continue to keep faith with what we pledged in years to come.
Yes, oh yes, and quickly, says President Trump. Yes, oh yes.
Trump is not fit to be president. No, he's not. Again, as I've said before, I don't have any issue with anybody on any side of the political aisle or any point of the political spectrum asking tough questions about President Biden's mental fitness. It's fair game. But it is indefensible to not apply the same standard to Trump. By definition, the only way to evaluate these two candidates properly is to hold them to the same standard and then evaluate, okay? And I mentioned before, the polls do show that there are serious questions about Trump's mental fitness as well. This is from an ABC Ipsos poll, which was just released yesterday. So this poll asks about honesty and trustworthiness, commitment to American democracy, whether or not the candidate represents your personal values, whether or not they understand the problems of people like you, whether they have the mental sharpness it takes to serve effectively as president, and whether or not they are in good enough physical health to be president. So Biden cleans house on honesty and trustworthiness, commitment to American democracy, representation of your personal values, and understanding the problems of people like you. In other words, Donald Trump is seen as less honest, less devoted to American democracy, and far more detached from your personal values and the problems of everyday Americans. Now, Trump does enjoy an advantage with polling, as we've acknowledged, with respect to perceived mental sharpness. But folks, this is where it's really important. When you consider people who think that President Biden is more mentally fit than Trump, which is a minority, and the number of people who think neither of them are mentally fit to be president, it is a majority. 55% of the country think that Donald Trump does not have the mental fitness to be president. Again, it's worse for Biden. No one is denying that the perception is much worse for Biden, and it's a real issue with which the Biden campaign must contend. But you are lying if you pretend that this is not also a perceived issue for Trump. And this is in a media ecosystem, I might add, which hyper fixates on Biden. Trump is given the most advantageous media ecosystem imaginable given his particulars, and still 55% of the country think that he's mentally unfit to be president? It's worth considering. USA Today had a pretty good op-ed about this. Folks, I'm worried about Donald Trump and his mental decline, which was on vivid display at a rally Tuesday night on one of his Florida golf courses. During the event, the former president slurred his words, claimed his son Don Jr. is married when he's actually just engaged, and consistently described the world around him in a manner wholly inconsistent with reality. During one heartbreaking moment, Trump stopped talking for a full minute while the usual eerie music favored by an unhinged conspiracy group called QAnon played in the background. He sweatily moved his head back and forth and randomly pointed at people, appearing not to know exactly what he was doing. It's clear Trump lacks the mental capacity to run against Biden. It was tough to watch, but there's little question the 78-year-old no longer has the faculties needed to take on President Biden in the race for the presidency. It's now up to Trump's family and responsible members of the Republican Party to find a way for him to gracefully step aside and let a younger, more competent candidate take over, possibly someone like Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. And it goes on like this. And the point of the op-ed, what they're talking about, and they go on at length with various citations, is they're highlighting the asymmetry. They're highlighting the asymmetry. And there is an asymmetry. It's just an objective fact. We'll probably do another video about that because more and more evidence is coming out, particularly in the aftermath of the first presidential debate between Biden and Trump. But yes, this is worth noting that there are serious questions about Donald Trump's mental fitness, despite this enormously advantageous media ecosystem. And again, to the extent that mental fitness is a concern for you, and it should be, you should, if you're being honest, apply the same standard to both men and then judge accordingly. Let me know what you think in the comments.